And good morning, everybody. Good morning, Stephanie. Good morning, Lisa. You gals even beat me to the punch this morning. I hope everyone is doing fantastic. We have a wonderful show today. I'm just touching on faith. And at some point, I'd love to talk about faith journeys, but we're going to talk about the practical benefits of faith and where faith plays in. We're just going to touch on that. I was inspired this morning. I hope that's okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about faith. But before that, we've got uplifting other news that's out there, or updates or hot tips or things that I have that are not just COVID related. They're not political. Hopefully, they're things that are just uplifting, that enrich your day. And before any of that, you know what time it is, my super friends. So Stephanie or Lisa or whoever's out there, if you have a warm cup of coffee or a warm cup of tea, share with me. And this morning, I've got tea. Share with me this morning what we're grateful for. Let's do morning cup of gratitude. Let's do it. For this morning's cup of gratitude, I cannot tell you how grateful I am for my lovely wife putting together a hike yesterday. Marissa put together an awesome hike. We all got out to Colt Creek State Park. We actually ended up with about 16 people, something like that. It was our biggest group yet. And this time, this hike passed very easily for me. The first time, if I had to confess, Marissa and I were on a march. I was near running this thing because I typically like Sundays to be quiet. And so if we're going to go hike, I want this thing done with. And but yesterday was very pleasant. We have great people. It was a great group. I caught up with people. Natalia, I'm looking at you. I met people and talked with them for the first time. Steve, I'm looking at you. I had a great time with you guys. And Marissa had great photos from that. So go check out Spark Explore. And I'm telling you, on this lovely Monday, that's the main thing I'm grateful for. Lisa Welsh says she's grateful that she gets to get up and drive deliveries. Listen, you are doing divine work. If you can see the joys and blessings you have, it might not be the highest desire for your life. I know that building websites isn't always the highest desire I have for my life. I know that, and my life won't always be that either, but I can find joy in it. And a note on this from Lisa Welsh. A note on this from the movie Soul by Pixar. I'm also grateful, going back to my warm cup of morning gratitude, I'm also grateful that I saw Soul this weekend because it reminded me we need to be sparked, but your purpose isn't your spark necessarily, though they can be. They're not necessarily. So the thing that lights you up, you don't necessarily have to make a life around, as long as you can find joy and happiness in what you do. Stephanie Meyer says, I'm grateful to live in Florida and have such a cool governor. Listen, Stephanie, I know not everyone is fans of Mr. DeSantis. I myself have been a huge fan of how his composure has been through all of this, even back into early last year. So I'm with you. I think we live in a great state. And Lisa Welsh, I am also grateful that you get to get up and do deliveries and participate in life through deliveries such as that. So let's talk about wrong graphic. Let's talk about other news. Here we go. For other news this morning, we covered the great conjunction of late last year, and this is where Jupiter and Saturn looked like a big super planet. Well, they're taking it one step further. Yes, there is a massive level up. Here we go. Boom. There's my notes there. It's a massive level up where now we have a three-way planetary conjunction happening, I believe, this weekend. And it's Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury. You can find this just after sunset because it's going to be low in the western and southwestern sky. That's where the sun goes down. As soon as the sun goes down, you should be able to start to see some things that look like very bright stars. Jupiter's going to be the brightest. Saturn will be close to it, and Mercury will be the lowest on the horizon. But you should be able to see it even more clearly with a pair of binoculars. But if you want to take time this week to catch a awesome astrological event or celestial event, you're welcome to check that out there. Always look to the stars, my friends. Always look to the stars for several reasons. Number one, we need to be reminded of how small we actually are in the universe. I think it's important to remember how small we are. I think Carl Sagan called it when they looked back at the blue marble, I think they called it the cosmic view. We have to remember how small we are and how small some of the things that we think are so politically important or so racially important, some of these things, and though they are to the individual, and I do not mean to demean them from that regard, it's healthy to temper that with a cosmic view to remember how small we are and how grand the universe is. But also, the second thing I think it's important to look up to the stars about, and that is this: to realize still to our knowledge how unique we are in the universe. We are a unique species, and for all of our tech and for all of our searching, and I do still yet believe we will find intelligent life out there. In spite of that, we still have not, and we're still on a very unique and important journey. So I do believe it's important to look up to the stars. Other news, number 2, does faith impact your happiness? Does faith impact an individual's subjective well-being? In research about happiness, you have to actually take happiness and recognize that happiness, first and foremost, is a subjective measure, and there is no objective measurement of happiness. From this study in the National Institute of Health, this was not a religious group, and Lisa just simply says, yep. I love it. Lisa, Lisa, does faith improve happiness? Yes. She says, yep. Sublimely simple, my dear Lisa. I love it. But in research, we know that exploring happiness and determinants of happiness is often difficult. And that is because happiness is so subjective. But understanding that happiness is so subjective, this atheist group actually put together some research on, in general, faith, and not just religious faith, but faith in general. Does it contribute to people's happiness? This is what they found. Moderate faiths, such as general mainstream Protestantism, general mainstream Buddhism, or general mainstream Roman Catholicism, those people reported the highest levels of happiness. Now, this is a spectrum, obviously, and the data is wide and varied, but the more moderate happiness came from atheists. Atheists in general said, meh, I'm happy at a moderate level. The least happy people were Orthodox or extreme believers. So whatever they believed, if there was Protestantism, but that if there was extreme Protestantism, if it was Orthodox Islam or Orthodox Greek, whatever it was, in the orthodoxy and in the extremists, they found that those respondents had the least amount of happiness. Now, a big factor in whether a Protestant, a moderate Protestant, felt extreme happiness or no happiness largely was determined based on the country they lived in. So the country you live in determines a lot. And the researchers were speculating that this was probably because the sense of agency. When someone has faith in something higher, but also has the ability to choose their own way in life, to set their own course, to make their own decisions, and to make their own way. When people lived in those countries, they experienced a major jump in happiness. So let's not forget that freedoms determine whether or not faith is uplifting or not. So what is the superior trait? Faith or freedoms? It's hard to say. The research is out, but if you are interested in the article or the research paper, I've got it for you right here. Boom. But I would say, based on what I studied or what I read from the abstract and the brief and the intro pages, from what I could tell, I would say, largely speaking, having faith in something, and that also includes faith in science and transhumanism. Hear me on that. Having faith in it, not just cognizantly saying, I believe in something and moving on, but having a living, breathing relationship with something you have faith in is what brings it happiness. Interesting study. And last but not least, is water alien and alive? Let's talk about it. So we're talking about things and believing in things, and we were walking on our hike yesterday, and someone said, Grant, what's one of the more flakier thoughts you've ever entertained? And I would say, well, I mean, I think people might think it's flaky. Marissa and I talk about this stuff all the time. We don't think it's flaky, but we often talk about the sense of oneness this human species has with one another. And we often think about these things in the context of faith. Is it God? Well, sure. Is it spirit? Sure. But what is that? Alive. Boom. I love it. Alive. Stephanie, what are you referring to? I would love to hear more about what you mean about alive. Stephanie just drops a one-liner and it boggles my mind. What is alive? I'd love to hear more. Oh, is it alive? Is water alive? I'm sorry. Stephanie's probably responding to the water. Is water alive? So the thing about water is this. We as a living species exhibit so much resonance when we're in harmony with other people. And it jars us when we see murder. It jars us when we see people tackling the Capitol. And it doesn't matter your politics on it. It is a crunchy feeling. There's a fightiness about it. The same when we see protesters getting out of control. Thinking about BLM last year, not peaceful protesting, but violent protesting. And when we see the police clashing, it glitches with us. No matter, Stephanie says you asked about water. Absolutely. Is water alive? I believe water is living. So I bring this up because in a lot of our discussions about water, there's a phenomenal book that I want to drop on you. And I dropped it on Steve as we were hiking yesterday. And it was the book titled The Hidden Messages of Water. I think the author is Masaru, a Japanese doctor, Masaru Emiro or something like that. Forgive me for butchering that entirely. I know I am. The Hidden Messages of Water. Stephanie says crystals tell all, and she is right. I'm sure she and I have seen the same documentary, What the Bleep Do We Know? Or she's read the same book, The Hidden Messages of Water. And what this means is this, to summarize. They have taken water from Tokyo and polluted, and it was absolutely polluted from the city, and they tried to freeze and crystallize it, and it would not crystallize. However, doing several experiments of speaking, literally speaking positivity, or literally taping photos of mountains on that water, they then try to crystallize the water, and it does crystallize. And this obviously raised some very important questions. So they decided to do the opposite. They took pure water from Mount Fuji, and they actually crystallized beautiful snowflake crystals, beautiful fractals coming off of this water. And then they spoke hate and spoke fighting and stuck photos of war on this water, and it wouldn't crystallize. They took these experiments much further. And I highly recommend you read the book, Hidden Messages of Water. But I present for your consideration one thought that Marissa took even further, which I tend to entertain. Do I believe it? Not necessarily, but I entertain it. And that's this thought. What if water is the alien? Every living thing that we know, when we say something is living, its distinguishing factor is that it is water-based. Whether it's plants or trees or animals, they have a high percentage of water. And what if the resonance I feel with another being, what if that resonance is water speaking to itself? How like the spirit is that? Very like. How like what we call the breath of God is that? Quite alike. And when we talk about quantum physics and we talk about God speaking unto God and my spirit said unto your spirit, when we look at all of these references in many of the faiths, how interesting would it be if we found that water was the freaky thing? In fact, when water freezes, it floats, it does not sink. When water, a liquid, takes solid form, it floats, it does not sink. When just about anything else moves from liquid form to solid form, it sinks. How interesting is that? Water is an interesting being. Is it alive? I like to think it is, but is it alive because it's in me or because I am it? I don't know, but yet another riddle in faith. So let us talk about faith. Here we go. I wanted to talk about faith this morning for several reasons. Number one, I was stirred by it in my quiet time this morning on how important faith is. Regardless of your faith, I want you to pause with me a moment and actually try to take this in. I want to encourage you to have faith in something. From the book Sapiens, he often talks about the evolution of humanity. And Jessica says, God is in the rain. V for Vendetta, one of my favorite comic books and movies of all time. Jessica dropping bombs with God is in the rain. I would buy that wholesale. Jessica. Thank you for dropping that word on us. So I want to talk about faith because I feel like as we adult, we start to let go of faith. We probably attend church more. We probably insist that our children and nephews and families believe what we believe more. But so rarely do I see people as they become adult have faith more. And I want you to take this faith outside of the context of God. I want you to take this faith to the broader meaning of believing in better things. Believing in divinity, absolutely. But believing in bigger things. I want to read this for you very quickly. It's just a quick sentence from Think and Grow Rich on the chapter on faith. And for those who don't know, Billy Graham was quoted as saying he based his entire ministry on the chapter on faith from Think and Grow Rich because in the way they word it there, it finally hit home for him of what faith was all about. It says this: have faith in yourself, faith in the infinite. Before we begin the book, Think and Grow Rich, you should be reminded again that faith is the eternal elixir which gives life, power, and action to the impulse of thought. Faith is the starting point of all accumulation of riches. Faith is the basis of all miracles and all mysteries which cannot be analyzed by the rules of science. Faith is the only known antidote for failure. Faith is the element, the chemical which, when mixed with prayer, gives one direct communication with infinite intelligence. Faith is the element which transforms the ordinary vibration of thought created by the finite mind of man into its spiritual equivalent. Faith is the only agency through which the cosmic force of infinite intelligence can be harnessed and used by man. You see, this morning, I am not necessarily talking about God, though you can't help talking about faith without talking about godliness, or what we call the divinity, or what we call infinite intelligence. But I am reminded this morning in my quiet time how mundane living can get the older we get. But when we return to faith, how meaningful it becomes. No, I'm not talking about the opiate of the masses as Karl Marx talked about it. I'm talking about a very real function of the human experience. Marx hoped that we had zero faith. And a lot of people believe scientists want us to have no faith. And that's not true either. In fact, scientists believe in something else. They believe in curiosity, which I tend to resonate quite deeply with. But I'm bringing faith up because, per the National Institute of Health research I gave above, faith can be done wrong. When faith separates us, when faith creates extremists that make us shape an us or them paradigm, we're getting faith wrong. We're getting religion wrong when there is an us or them paradigm from the thing we believe. Because when there's an us or them paradigm, how can water reject water, right? How can spirit reject spirit? This is why when Buddhists say namaste, one of the translations is, I bow to the light within you. Meaning, I don't care what mess you bring to the table. I can recognize the divine in you. So faith should be healing. It should be uniting. But also, and I did want to make that note about people. I have seen too many people claim faith, yet reject others. Lisa Welsh said, faith should align and bring together. If it doesn't, it ain't right. Does it get more sublime than that? It should align us and make us better. When Sapiens, the book called out how often faith and religion played a role, it played a role in the evolution of the species because when any faith resurges, for example, when Christianity goes away and dissipates because it gets too big for its britches. It ends up in politics and then suddenly gets crushed by mainstream nihilism. It goes underground. When Christianity goes underground, it purifies. And when it comes back up, you see that there's a surge in sciences, there's a surge in support, there's a surge in economy. You see this in many of the faiths that are forced underground. They are purified because they lose their agenda of dividing and division, us or them, and they focus on what matters most. And remember, the thing about faith is the individual experience. So when you sit down, do you make quiet time in the morning to think about your day and then add a layer of faith to that? Or do you just roll out of bed, shower, and get going and hope for the best? It's a hollow existence when you don't make time for faith. You could have faith in your plans. You could have faith in your purpose. You could have faith in your role. You don't necessarily need faith in God. Jessica says, I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. Chi, prana, spirit, energy, the light. Different religions call. Oh, you're just using different words for spirit. Yes, yeah. Chi, prana, spirit, energy, the light, infinite intelligence. Different religions call it different things, but they all mean similar things within those religions. And if we could bow to that in one another, you would see a release. You'd see a release in your humors. You'd see a release in your energy. You'd see a release in your stress. I think one of the most divine things I heard said even this morning, I'll show you exactly what it was. We were talking about gratitude, and Lisa said, grateful to get up and drive deliveries this morning. Gratefulness is the door threshold to faith that you can do things in a divine way. I do recommend, and it was lovely Jessica who actually recommended Soul to me that finally pushed me over the edge and caused me to watch the movie Soul. And it was a reminder. With State of the Spark, the goal was to create pivot moments, threshold moments to reconnect you with a sense of connectedness to the divine. Whether that was in building your business and feeling purposefulness and meaning in that, whether that was writing your goals with the 7-day homework, whether that was the top 100 Dream Igniter, whether that's going on a trip with Marissa on Spark Explore and having an existential experience, whether that was sitting and meditating and doing the deep internal work of connecting with what brings you joy. Spark, Ignite, Explode, Radiate. Each of those moments were meant to remind you that you can look at the mundane around you and bring the divine, bring the light by first and foremost reconnecting with your faith that you're part of a bigger whole. That's what this is all about. That's what this reminder is. That's why we call it State of the Spark. Is this your destination? No, watch Soul. The spark is not your purpose. It's the pivot moment. It's the spiritual leverage you have to go back into a state of joy and realize whether you're Stephanie Meyer rebuilding her real estate empire, whether you're Jessica building up Energy Code and building up her coaching business, whether you're Lisa Welsh delivering healing through microgreens. Lisa, I want to encourage all of you, Jessica, Lisa, Stephanie, and anyone else watching, that the energy and life force and joy and faith you bring to that seemingly mundane thing is the very thing that makes it magic. It's the very thing that shifts that water from dead to crystallizing. I want to encourage you to live a faith-filled life today. I want to encourage you to look at the mundane and welcome it as a joyful friend, not as drudgery. And that shift, is that just an opiate to get through? It does that. Don't deride that fact. But it also does so much more, and that creates the vibration and frequency you need for your level up. This is why I say don't quit, graduate. If there's something that you're sick of, don't quit it, graduate from it. And the only way to do that is to welcome it as a joyful friend, conquer it, bring a new energy, have a new picture in your mind's eye of who you can be. Be a superior being today. Reconnect with your executive self, your higher self, your divine self. And remember, reflect. And here's how you do this. Reflect back to the moment you can remember when you had the deepest belief, the deepest connectedness to what we call God, the deepest connection. And I guarantee you will not find dogma or extremism there. I guarantee you'll find releasing. You let go of some sin part of your heart. You let go of some hatred. You let go of some earthliness. And you just said, welcome, welcome to the divine. I encourage you to explore your faith today. I know I am. That's where it's coming from. I had my quiet time this morning, and this is my dream machine. It's got all my goals, and I was trying to reconnect with the sense of, wait a minute, I've achieved so many of my goals. This is the risk of achievement. This is why people self-sabotage goals, because they have an unconscious knowing that if they achieve their goals, they won't strive further. Michelle Harvey says, there is an elegant simplicity for thankfulness, gratefulness, and joy. Seek God. So appreciate you, Marissa. And Michelle Harvey, we appreciate you. Guys, listen, we should leave on this note. Let's do a blessing. I bless you today. I hope you move forward in faith. That gives me chills to say, and I want you to say it to someone else today. I bless you today. I hope you find your spark. I hope you walk towards your purpose. I hope you ignite lives of explosive significance today, starting with your own.